John Claude, a seasoned deep-sea diver, mysteriously disappeared while exploring the Fontestramar cave in southern France. Years later, his body was discovered trapped within a narrow passage deep within a cave. What caused this tragic accident, and what lessons can we learn about the perils of underwater caves? Today, we'll look at a similar 3 stories of cave diving gone horribly wrong, highlighting the risks involved even for highly skilled divers. Let's dive into the video. Let's start with John Claude's story in Fontestramar, a big underwater cave system in southern France. This beautiful place has attracted many brave explorers. John Claude and his brother Duma, along with some other close friends, had been planning their trip to Fontestramar for months. They were experienced divers and felt ready for the challenge. On the day of the dive, the weather was perfect and everyone was excited. As they went into the clear water, the sunlight quickly disappeared. They used their dive lights to see in the dark cave. At first, everything went well. They swam through the narrow passages, sudden drops, and cloudy water with no problems. They were going deeper into the cave than anyone had gone before. But as they went further, things got harder. The water got colder, the passages got narrower, and it became harder to see. What started as an exciting adventure was turning into a tough fight against the cave and their own tiredness. Even though it was getting harder, the team kept going. They thought they were about to make a big discovery, but they didn't realize how complicated the cave was or how tired they were getting. Their oxygen was running out faster than they had expected, and the dive was wearing them out. Their hearts were beating fast, and their muscles were aching. They decided it was time to turn back. But what should have been a careful return turned into a race to get out alive. In the dark, cloudy water, John Claude got separated from the group. It happened so fast that the others didn't even notice until they were almost back at the surface. When they got out of the water, they realized with horror that John Claude was still in the cave. Duma, John Claude's brother, made a tough decision. Even though he was very tired and low in air, he went back into the water to look for John Claude. He swam through the dark passages, desperately searching, but the cave now seemed like a confusing maze, and each turn led him deeper into trouble. As Duma's air was running out, he had to make the heartbreaking choice to go back to the surface without John Claude. The next few days were filled with frantic searches, but they couldn't find him. John Claude had vanished in the cave that he had wanted to explore. It took 3 years before anyone found out what happened to John Claude. Another diver, exploring a far part of Fontestramar, made a sad discovery. They found human remains, still wearing diving gear, stuck in a narrow crack deep in the cave. It was John Claude. Finding John Claude's body gave his family and friends some closure, but it also raised scary questions. How long did he survive in the dark? What was he thinking in his last moments? We'll never know the answers. John Claude's story reminds us how dangerous cave diving can be. Even with lots of experience and careful planning, things can go wrong very quickly in underwater caves. Story number 2. Our second story is also about Fontestramar, where another experienced diver met a similar fate. Marcsluszny, a Belgian adventurer known for doing daring things, came to Fontestramar in June 2018. He was eager to explore its mysterious depths. Mark had done many extreme things before. He swam across the English Channel alone and set a record for high-altitude bungee jumping. Now, he was passionate about cave diving, and Fontestramar was his biggest challenge yet. On June 28, 2018, Mark and his diving partner, Lauren Richard, got ready to go into the cave. As they entered the calm water hiding the cave's entrance, Mark was joking around, trying to keep relaxed. At first, the dive went well. Mark and Lauren swam easily through the dark, narrow channels. They knew what they were doing. Even when Mark's gear got caught on a sharp rock and tore, he quickly fixed the problem and kept going. But as they went deeper into the cave, the excitement started to wear off. The darkness seemed to close in around them, and the tight passages that were exciting at first now felt scary and dangerous. Eventually, they realized their oxygen was getting low. Lauren knew that it was time to go back, but Mark, always pushing limits, wanted to go further. He knew it was dangerous and against the rules of cave diving, but he couldn't resist. Lauren watched in shock as Mark waved goodbye and swam deeper into the cave. Lauren had to choose between following his friend and saving himself. He decided to go back to the surface alone, hoping Mark would realize his mistake and come back too. Mark kept going down, reaching an amazing depth of 380 feet, much deeper than they had planned. The water was colder here, the pressure was intense, and his air was running out fast. For a moment, He felt thrilled about pushing his limits, but then reality hit him. He had gone too far and needed to get back to the surface right away. Lauren waited anxiously at the surface, but Mark didn't come back. A rescue team quickly went into the cave to look for him, but the cave that Mark had wanted to explore now seemed determined to keep him hidden. Days turned into weeks, and still no sign of Mark. The rescue efforts were eventually stopped. It wasn't until 2 months later, in September 2018, that they finally found Mark's body deep in the cave. Many people in the diving community wondered if Mark was really ready for such a difficult dive. The same things that made him famous for extreme sports, his fearlessness and desire to push limits, may have led to his death. Story number 3. Our last story takes us to a different place, but one that's just as dangerous for cave divers. In Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, there's a cave system called Sac Actun. It's famous among explorers and scientists because it holds secrets about ancient history. On a sunny afternoon in 2017, 3 experienced divers got ready to explore Sac Actun. Their leader was a 33-year-old instructor who lived in the area. They had good equipment and felt confident, but they weren't very experienced with the special breathing devices they were using, called closed-circuit rebreathers, CCRs, especially in caves. The dive started well. The team easily swam through the first parts of the cave. They left guidelines behind them to help them find their way back in case of an emergency. After about 30 minutes, they came up in an air-filled chamber to rest and plan the next part of their dive. As they started the second part of their exploration, aiming for a section of the cave called the cenote, they hit their first big problem. There was a very narrow part of the passage that was hard to get through with their bulky CCR equipment. They let divers. The lead diver struggled to squeeze through, scraping his gear on the sharp rocks. Realizing how dangerous this was, the lead diver decided to turn back and find another way. This detour took up valuable time in air, but they eventually got back on track, reaching their planned checkpoint at 3:15 p.m. Here, the third diver in the group signaled that he had used up 1/3 of his air and needed to start going back. As the third diver headed back, the 2 others decided to keep going, determined to reach their goal. As they entered a deeper, more challenging part of the cave, the water got colder and the passages got narrower. The feeling of being alone and far from safety got stronger. Suddenly, the second diver noticed something was wrong. He turned to see the lead diver panicking, his eyes wide with fear. The lead diver was in serious trouble. His regulator, the device that gives him air, had gotten tangled in his gear. As he thrashed around desperately, the second diver faced a terrible choice. He knew that trying to help a panicking diver in such a tight space could lead to both of them dying. With a heavy heart, the second diver had to move away from his struggling friend. He watched helplessly as the lead diver fought for his life in the dark, cold waters of Sac Actun. The second diver started to swim back, feeling scared and guilty. On his way back, the second diver met up with the third diver of the team near one of their checkpoints. Together they made their way back to the surface, coming out at 4:52 p.m. with racing hearts and shaken spirits. Their leader, the man who had guided them into this dangerous dive, was gone. The next day, a recovery operation began. Local cave diving experts, along with police and other authorities, led the search. They quickly found the body of the lead diver, but they couldn't figure out exactly why he died. It looked like he might have gotten confused or disoriented, which probably led him to drowning, but they didn't know what caused this in the first place. These sad stories from Fontestramar and Sac Actun show how dangerous cave diving can be, even for very good divers. People who survive these accidents often feel guilty and keep wondering if they could have done things differently. These stories remind us that cave diving can be very unpredictable and needs a lot of skill and mental strength. Even though it's risky, cave diving is still important for learning about science and exploring new places. The most important thing is to respect how dangerous these underwater caves can be and always put safety first. This way people can keep exploring and discovering amazing things underwater in the future. That's all for today's video. If you like this video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more gripping stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Lastly, Afterrender produces our YouTube videos, specializing in top-notch video production.